Hi Rashid, you there? Okay, there's one more student, Rakesh, right? So Rashid and Hanit are here. Okay, all right, you can share your screen and you can start with the revision session. Once you are done, we'll look at some practice questions on CPU scheduling.
Uh, Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Sir, ma'am, I have picked up the topic of round robin scheduling, ma'am, the CPU scheduling algorithms.
It's okay. So you are three people, three students, right? So whatever way you people have planned, you can go ahead and start presenting.
Okay.
Hanif,
Yes.
can I go first? Because I made like a basic introduction to CPU scheduling. So I can
Yeah.
give like the introduction and then you can go on to the round robin, etc.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Hello, miss. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is visible. Go ahead and start.
Okay. So today I will be giving a basic introduction to CPU scheduling. So first of all, usually in single processor systems, only one process can run at a time. Any others must wait until the CPU is free and can be rescheduled. And now the objective of a multi-programming processor system is to have some process always running to maximize CPU's utilization. So basically, the job of CPU scheduling is to allow multiple processes to work efficiently and to find a way to maximize and to make the time as short as possible for CPUs to be programmed. And now there are several scheduling criterias in CPU scheduling with which we usually measure how we want to schedule the algorithms. The first criteria is the CPU utilization, and this is measured from 0% utilization of the CPU to 100% utilization of the CPU. This basically shows how busy the CPU is. Usually when you have a low load CPU, then it would be around 40%. And if you have a high load CPU, it would be around 90%. The next criteria is throughput. This means that the number of processes completed in one time unit. This is another way where we can try to see if a specific algorithm, scheduling algorithm is efficient or not. The next is turnaround time. This means the interval from the time of submission of a process to the time of completion of a process. So from start to end. And similarly, there is also waiting and response time. But the difference is that in waiting time, this basically sees how much time or what the period is spent for a process that is waiting in the ready queue, meaning it's waiting for its turn to come so that it can be processed. And another one is the response time. This isn't as often used, the response time, uh, and basically this means the amount of time it takes from the submission of a request for the process to be executed until the first response is produced, meaning not that the process is executed, but until it is about to start to be executed. That is basically the response time. And having these criterias in mind, there are now multiple types of CPU scheduling. The first one that I'll talk about is for first come first serve scheduling, short job scheduling, and related to shortest job scheduling is the shortest remaining time for scheduling. There's priority scheduling, round robin scheduling, which I believe Hanif will talk about, and there's multi-level queue scheduling. And within this, there's basically priority of levels in which the scheduling will occur. And similar to the multi-level is the multi-level feedback queue scheduling, which basically the difference is in multi-level, the priority cannot change whatsoever between the levels, but in the multi-level feedback queue, the priority can change depending on what feedback the CPU gets. So yeah, this was a very basic introduction, and now hopefully Hanif can give a more detailed outlook on the round robin scheduling. Thank you.
Good morning, guys. So, round robin is the most popular algorithm and it's used a lot. So, the idea is very simple. You maintain a circular queue, you keep the time quantum. So let's say that you maintain a time quantum of 2 units. So whatever processes that are there in the circular queue is a ready queue. So you pick them one by one in the circular manner. So, given them 2 units of time, which is your time quantum, and if a process is going to take less than 2 units of time, then the process finishes immediately and releases the CPU. Because there is no point in keeping the process busy for 2 units of time, right? So, so if a process needs 2 units of time, we if less than 2 units of time, we give it less than 2 units of time. Otherwise, if a process needs more than 2 units of time, we give the 2 units and then preempt this process and move to the next process. So let's understand the working of round robin with an example. So here we have three processes, namely P0, P1, and P2, and we have and there is also the arrival time and the burst time that is given. So the P0 is the only process which is arriving at time 0. So we schedule so we have P0 scheduled at time 0 and it runs till 2 units of time because the time quantum is given as only 2 units, right? So so it runs for 2 units of time. It's easy to assume that we have a circular queue in the ready queue in which only P0 is present. Now P0 takes 2 units of time, and by the time 2 units are completed, right? So there are two more processes, which is P1 and P2, which are waiting in the ready queue. So here both processes P1 and P2 they have the both arrival time. So I'm assuming that P1 has come first. Now P1 is going to take 1 unit of time. So even though the time quantum is 2, so one more point is that we need to keep updating the burst time because here P0 has already taken 2 units of time, so I've updated the burst time as 1. So now P1 is now the process P1 is going to take 1 unit of time. So even though the time quantum is 2, P1 only needs 1 unit of time. So P1 finishes with 1 unit of time, and it goes till 3. Now Now the process P1 exits from the circular queue or the ready queue because it's completed. Now the now P2 takes the CPU. Now P2 runs for 2 units of time because the burst time is 5 units. So P2 runs for 2 units of time and it preempts because we have a limitation of time quantum is 2 units. And then P naught takes the process again. So it's the remaining burst time that we need is 1. So it completes the P naught completes its processes, and the only process that is remaining in the remaining is only process P2. So P2 completes the process, and we have the Gantt chart. So let us from the Gantt chart, let us calculate the turnaround time and the waiting time. We have the completion time. So P naught is completing its process at 6 units. P1 is completing at 3, and P2 is completing at 9. So what is the turnaround time? Turnaround time is completion time minus the arrival time. So we have 6 minus 0, 3 minus 1 respectively. The waiting time is the turnaround time minus the burst time. So we have 6 minus 3 is 3 and this. So this is the basic working of the round robin scheduling algorithm. And the best part about the round robin is that it has a very good response time. So every process is assigned after the certain time quantum according to the number of processes which are there in the ready queue, right? So every process gets response. And one more thing is that if the time quantum which we need to take has to be carefully chosen, because if the time quantum is very low, then the context switching happens very regularly, and if the time quantum is larger, then it becomes first come first service algorithm. That's it.
Okay, good, Rashid and Haneet, Ahmed and Haneet. All right. So, would any one of you like to sort of shed a light on other scheduling algorithms as well? You do not need slides. You can just like that speak so that we have a quick revision and then we can look at some questions. If anyone else wants to do that in the class, you can also raise your hand and go ahead. You just have to give a very informal description about other scheduling algorithms, how they work. Anyone? No? All right, then give me a moment. I'll share my screen and let's discuss some questions. Okay, can someone tell me a bit about first come first serve? What happens there? You can type in the chat window or you can unmute yourself and speak.
The first process which enters the ready queue will be again, and then the other process which enters will be in the ready queue waiting state.
Yes, correct, Vignesh. So what happens in first come first serve? Whichever process comes first in the ready queue gets executed first, and it executes till completion. So no preemption, right? All right. Uh, Can someone explain the difference between shortest job first and shortest remaining time first? So I see that it was one point of confusion between many of you. So can someone tell us the absolute difference between the two with the help of an example maybe?
Ma'am, shortest job first is non-preemptive and shortest remaining job first is preemptive.
All right. So shortest job first it is non-preemptive and the other one is preemptive. All right. So can you give an example and tell me like what will be the difference between the two with the help of a very small example if possible. So if I give you one test case, let's say some arrival time and burst time of certain processes, then how will these two behave differently? All right. So let me give you an example. So I think shortest job first is quite clear to all of us. So you look at the burst time of all the processes, and whichever process has the shortest burst time, we execute that process. But then there is something which we need to look at, that is the arrival time. So definitely if a process has a very less burst time but it hasn't yet arrived, so there is no way you can execute it, right? So in that context, let's take this example. So I'm just creating this example on my own. Let's say we have two processes, P0 and P1. We have two things. So one is your arrival time and the other is the burst time. Assume that P0 has a burst time of 50 milliseconds and let's say P1 has a burst time of just 1 millisecond, let's say. So it's very clear that P1 should get executed before P0. But unfortunately, let's say the arrival time of P1 is 5 and let's say the arrival time of P note is 0. So with this example, you can see the difference between shortest job first and shortest remaining time first. So what will happen in shortest job first? Anyone? So which process will execute at time 0?
P naught will be executed as its arrival time is less than
P note, right? Because we only have P note till now. And when P note executes, and let's say P note is executing, it executed for 5 milliseconds, right? So after 5 milliseconds, let's say somewhere here you have 5 milliseconds. So P note still have to execute for 45 milliseconds, right, before completion. But at this time, P1 has also arrived in your ready queue and it also wants to execute. So there you can see the difference between the two. In which scheduling policies will P note execute and in which one will P1 execute?
shortest job first will be execute. P naught will be executed in as
Exactly, right? So in shortest job first, you cannot preempt P naught. So P naught will execute till 50 milliseconds and only after that you can fetch CPU from it and give it to P1. On the other hand, if it was shortest remaining time first, then as soon as P1 comes, right, now you have two processes in the ready queue. So as soon as one more process comes in the ready queue, you again have to make a decision. So at 5 milliseconds, P0 still needs CPU for 45 milliseconds. P1 needs it only for 1 milliseconds. So in shortest remaining job first, at this point after 5 milliseconds, you will execute P1 for 1 more milliseconds and after that you will execute P0. Alright. So that is the difference between the two. Alright. Which other scheduling algorithm do we have? So one, we have priority scheduling. So much like you can say that this shortest remaining time first, it is a specialized form of your priority scheduling, a special case of priority scheduling where you are deciding priority based on the burst time. So whichever process has least burst time, the process has the highest priority. In priority scheduling, you can have some other metric for priority apart from the burst time, right? So generally you are given which process is high in priority, which is low in priority, so on and so forth. So we do not have any at such formally non-preemptive version of priority scheduling. So we assume that priority scheduling is always preemptive. So let's quickly write down your FCFS, it is non-preemptive. SJF, shortest job first, it's also non-preemptive. SRTF, shortest remaining time first, is the preemptive version of shortest job first. Then we have priority scheduling, which is also preemptive. Round robin scheduling, what it is, preemptive or non preemptive? Preemptive, right? We are forcefully taking CPU away from the processes, so we are not executing one process entirely at one stretch, so it is preemptive. All right, one scheduling policy which should talk about is also multi-level feedback queue scheduling. So multi-level feedback queue scheduling is just a generalization of all the above approaches. It says that instead of just using one ready queue, you use multiple ready queues. So I can have multiple ready queues. In one you can use FCFS scheduling, in one you can use priority scheduling, in another one you can use round robin scheduling, right? Or priority or shortest job first or whatever you want, right? So at multiple places you are using multiple scheduling, but then there is a concept of priority among these queues as well. So this queue has the highest priority. Let's say it has the second highest priority and this has the least priority. So what will happen? So first of all, you will check this queue. If there are processes in this queue which is having the highest priority, you will execute them in whatever scheduling policies mentioned there in based on that scheduling policy. In case this queue is empty, only then you go and execute the processes in the second queue. And let's say meanwhile you are executing something in the second queue, but then a new process drops in the first queue, then again you are going to come back here and respond to the process in the first queue. So on first level, you see the priority between the queues. The queue which has the highest priority, you should serve the processes from that. And then if a queue is empty, then you can move to the other queues and follow the same thing. So we'll also discuss it based on an example. All right. Let's look at a few questions. Okay. So first question, it's the most simple one. So I'm going to give you certain processes, their arrival time and burst time, right? This I'm sure all of you can do. So what I want you to do is, after I give you the metrics, compute the Gantt charts for these processes based on shortest job first, shortest remaining time first, and round robin algorithm, and compute the waiting time and turnaround time for each case. So let me write it down. All right. So we want your shortest job first, shortest remaining time first, and round robin algorithm with your time quantum 8 time units, and compute the average waiting time and the average turnaround time. So we have revised the definitions of all these. Um, So I'll give you some time, go ahead and solve it. If you are confused anywhere, you can ask me. Otherwise, compute these metrics and give me your answer in the chat window. If possible, if any one of you, you can also, if you are joining the session from mobile, you can take a snapshot of your Gantt chart and you can place that picture in the chat window. That will be very helpful if any of you can do that. So be present in the today's lab session. I'm going to show you the marks for your minor 2 exam. So breaking ties is up to you. You can break ties in any way. So that way, different students can get different answers. So you can break the tie based on the arrival time here, or you can also break the tie based on just the process IDs. Right. So as an example, at time 30, your process 1 will finish. Right. At that time, you have process 2, process 4, and process 5. So one way you can do is to pick up process 5 because it arrived the earliest. Another way is you can assume that process 1 has the highest priority, process 2 has the second highest priority. So in that case, you can execute process 2. All right, so Snigdha has given us one Gantt chart. Let me take a look at it. So we have P1 from 0 to 30, all right, and then, okay, so she randomly picked, right, one of the processes. So after P1, yes, you can pick P4, all right. Um, yes, makes sense because P4 it has the shortest burst time among all the three processes we have. Correct, correct, correct. Okay, anyone else who has got the same answer? You don't get a tie here actually, right? Because no two processes they have the same burst time. Can someone verify the answer? So you can just upvote this Gantt chart if you are getting the same Gantt chart for SJF. All right, so Aditi, Sanjana, and Yuvraj getting the same answer. All right, for other parts. You can use a calculator for faster computations. What happened? So what will happen here? Let's see. So which process executes first? P1, right? Because at time 0 we have P1 only. We are doing it for shortest remaining time first. Till when will it execute? Anyone?
Till 3.
Till 3. So see, let's say P1 executed till 3. At 3 we have P5, right? But then at this time 3, P1 has 27 units left and P5 has 59 left. Alright, so we will not preempt. It will keep running. Alright. Then at 19 you have another process P2. And again, what will happen by the time 19? How much of its burst time would be left? 11, right? Yes, 11. So, but P2 is still having 15, which is greater than 11. So, even at 19, P1 will keep executing. And again at time 27, P4 will come, but by that time, P1 will only have 3 units left, right? P4 still has 10. So, even in that case, P1 will keep executed because the shortest remaining time first remains lowest at all these time stamps. So, it goes ahead and it executes till 30. Okay, what next? So at time 30, we have P2, P4 and P5 with us. All right. So we can start with P4, but it has the least burst time and execute it. So anyhow, it will execute because even in case P3 comes, its burst time is 24, which is much higher than 10. So it executes till time 40. So P1 is done, P4 is done. At time 40, we have P2, P3 and P5. And again, P2 has the least, right? So P2 executes for next 15 time units, which is 55. P2 done. And now we are left with P3 and P5. Both of them are in the ready queue. Again, P3 is having low burst time, so it executes for next 24 units. So you get 5 plus 4, 9, 5 plus 2, 79. And then at the end you have P5, which runs for another 59. Right, it runs till 138. Alright. So did anyone get this Gantt chart? Did you compute your waiting time and turnaround time based on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you write the values in the chat window? Wait.
I'm calculating it, ma'am. 1 second.
All right. Okay, Snigdha says average turnaround is 50.2, waiting is 22.6. All right, we got one upvote also. Great, right? So we computed it. So I guess that's the answer which all of you must get. Okay, did anyone solve for round robin? That's going to be slightly tricky here. So how to maintain this circular queue at all times and execute these processes? Let's see. Okay, Yuvraj has given the answer for the 3 cases. All right. Okay, this is for the round robin. Good. Is anyone else getting the same answer? Let's see. So at time 0, we only have P1, right? So we are going to execute it for 8 time units. So at time 0, you only had P1 in the ready queue. Then you were executing it. So I'm maintaining my ready queue here so that the steps are clear. What happens when this P1 was executing at time 3, P5 arrives in your ready queue. So I'm going to write P5 here. At time 8, P1 finishes its first burst and it comes here, right? So this is your queue. All right. So for P1, how much is left? 22 is left. All right. Then P5 starts executing, right? And it executes for another 8 bursts. So 51 is left. What next? Till 16, no other process comes, right? So P1 comes back after executing, and now you start executing P1 for 8 time units, right? So how much left? 22 minus 8, 14. All right. So when this P1 was executing, right, P2 comes at 19 time unit. So at 19th time unit, P2 had come, and at 24, P1 finished its burst. So it will come here after P2. What I'm going to execute next is P5. (51 minus 8) 43. Right, till 32, no other process comes. So P5 is next in the ready queue, and we
Ma'am, process 4 comes, right?
process 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, correct. Correct. So process 4 comes here, and then P5 is anyhow finished at 32. All right. Then we have P2 back, correct? Seven. And okay, during this time, no other process comes. All right. So P2 comes back here. Then we have P1, which executes till 48. 6 left here. Correct me if I do some computation mistake anywhere. And when this P1 was executing at time 42, P3 comes. So P3 is going to come here and P1 is here, right? So now you have all the processes in your ready queue. Now you can keep executing them in the same order as you see them. All right, so after P1 we have P4. P4 didn't execute even once. All right. So you have 2 left here. After P4 we have P5, right? So on and so forth. You can now complete this Gantt chart. So one thing to note here, so next time when P4 will run, right, it's only left for 2 time units. So we can't run it for exact 8 time units. We'll only run it for 2 time units and it will be finished. All right. So can someone verify the answer which Yuvraj has given in the chat window? So I have a few more questions which I wanted to discuss. Let's move on. So unfortunately, I do not have the answer to this. So if someone could verify, it would be awesome. Okay, this question we'll finish it in the lab time today. We'll discuss it during the lab time. There's one more question which I'll take up during the lab time because these are mostly the same kind of questions which you have done before. Let's look at a slightly challenging question. So consider this. Let's say you have a system in which you have 10 input-output bound jobs and there is one CPU intensive job, right? Now, these input output bound jobs, how they run is, they require 1 millisecond of CPU and after executing for 1 millisecond of CPU, they request an input output. And for performing this input output request, it takes them 10 milliseconds of time, right? There is one more thing given here. So what will happen whenever a process it has completed 1 millisecond, it requires input output, so it will go to the waiting state. It will be in the waiting state for 10 milliseconds, after which it will come back to the ready queue. One more thing, so when you context switch from one process to another, you are given the context switching overhead, which is 0.1 milliseconds. And you can assume that this CPU bound job, it is quite big, right? You can assume that all the processes, they are long running tasks. Long running task means you are not given like exact CPU burst time which they require. So you can assume that their CPU burst time is quite heavy. So what you have to compute is, can you compute CPU utilization in case you are using a round robin scheduling with a time quantum of 1 millisecond? Did you understand the question? See if you can solve it, otherwise I'll discuss about it in the lab session. So CPU utilization is whenever you are running your processes, so sometimes they are using CPU, sometimes they are not using CPU. So in this entire time, for what fraction of time is your CPU being utilized? How will you draw a Gantt chart for this first of all? Any inputs? Give me 1 second. I'll also copy paste the question in the chat window, that you can also read it on your own. Just answer the A part of it as of now. Okay, so let me give you an idea. Does anyone has any input on how to proceed? You can also give me unorganized thoughts. All right. Let's say we are trying to draw our Gantt chart here. Let me name these input output processes from, let's say, P1 to P10. So these are your 10 input output bound processes, and we have one CPU bound process. So let me name it as PC. All right. It's taking it some time to come on the screen. So did anyone start with the Gantt chart? Which process do you want me to run first? Anything can go first, right? So any votes on which one do you want me to take first? Any of the input output bound job or a CPU bound job? Okay, so let's take a general case. So let's take this case where I'm going to run 5 input output bound jobs, and then I'm going to run the CPU bound job, and then I run the remaining 5 input output bound jobs. Right. It's taking some time to appear on the screen, so maybe you can just write on a piece of paper what I'm saying. So at time 0, right, your first process starts, which is an input output bound process. P1 starts. Remember that it's round robin scheduling. So from 0 till when will it run? Let me try to unshare and share my screen again. Just a second. Okay, we are out of time, so I'll take it up during the lab class. Right, so we'll discuss some of the questions during the lab class. So meanwhile, just think about this. So I'm starting this process P1 from time 0. Till when will it run for your A part? Your time quantum is 1 millisecond, right? So your each input output bound job, it will run for 1 millisecond, not just because it's the time quantum, but also because it requires 1 millisecond of your CPU time. If it required only 0.5 millisecond, it would have run for 0.5 milliseconds before going for your input output. So this time it could run for 1 millisecond, and then it goes off to your waiting queue for input output. Then your second input output bound job comes, and now you are going to execute that, but you are given that context switch takes 0.1 millisecond. So here you are actually going to wait for 0.1 millisecond. During this time context switch is happening, your CPU is not doing any useful work. From 1.1 you will start with your second process, which is P2. Till when will it run? 2.1 millisecond, exactly, right? Another 1 millisecond, and then again 0.1 for your context switch. This is now 2.2. You run P3, so on and so forth. You go and run all your processes, right? So now can you make your Gantt chart in such a way, in this way, right? Compute for one cycle of your round robin process. So one cycle means you execute all the input bound jobs for one time quantum, and the CPU bound job also for one time quantum. So take a look at that 1 second, that one cycle, and then try to see for how much time your CPU was being utilized, right? So think about that. We'll discuss about this further in today's lab session. So I'll stop here.